What's going on,
Shutting everything down.
everybody? Welcome to another edition of What's Your Story with your host, Carrie Lewis, with the mostest, because I am popping and vibing today. We're in Mercury retrograde. This is my second show, and both times technology has proven challenging, but we overcome. And today I am truly honored and privileged to have somebody who I admire, who is tenacious and resilient and has overcome a lot to build business, to build family and community, and to just be present in who she is in every moment. Jen Neves, you have a photography business, but really you encompass so much than who you are as a businesswoman. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Carrie.
I
I'm excited to
love
be
it.
here. It's my honor. It's my privilege to be part of this. So thank you.
Oh my gosh. So I asked you to join because of some of the things that you have done in your life are just so inspiring, and I really believe that the community can benefit from hearing your ability to see something and chase after it with this unwavering will, starting with when I learned that you decided to become a police officer. So you want to share a little bit about that story?
Uh, okay. So, all right. So let's back up a minute. So
Yeah.
just to let you know, so my photographer. So I started as a photographer, went to police work, and then back to photography.
Wow.
So yeah. So if we want to talk about that, I can
I
start
want
that
you to
way.
share with the listening audience your journey and whatever feels right and good for you.
Okay. So, in career wise, when I was 7, so I grew up. We didn't have a lot of money. We were immigrants. So, my dad owned a grocery store, and that's a whole other story how that came to be. But I started there, um, in the store at 7, like bagging groceries, all of those good things. Um, you know, uh my brother I had a twin brother who also did the same thing, and we were so short and tiny. My dad had to build us a box to like climb onto the box to reach the register, and we're talking about like a register that doesn't tell you what the change is. We're talking about a register that will like click the big fat buttons and then like kind of figure out what the change is. But then at 13, we had a family friend who owned a photography
Mm.
studio, and he was like, "Hey, she seems like a good worker, and probably can get her to help the studio out at literally $2 an hour, right?" So I'm 51. Let's do the math, which I suck at. So whatever, how old I was, how long ago that was, it was still $2 an hour, and that was still sucky money, but it was $2 an hour.
Yeah.
So I was like, not bad, right? I started young as an entrepreneur. So I would go into the studio, I would be like shoving pictures into albums. 13 years old, I started doing some of that stuff at 16. So 3 years later now, on a Friday night, 8 o'clock at night, this woman runs into the studio. Hey, can you shoot my wedding? She asks my boss. My photographer's sick. And back in the day, it was all males, right? So it was all male photographers. There was no young females in the business, in the industry. And he's like, "Well, I can't because I'm shooting a wedding. But Jen here, she has been going with me to weddings for 3 years. She shoots. And back in the day, they were like medium format cameras, which I don't have any in the office, but they were big fat cameras, no digital. So you don't know what's coming as you're shooting.
Wow.
And took a chance, did it.
Wait, I wanna
Came out
pause
great.
because I think like, I want our
Yeah.
listening audience to hear this because I really cultivate this, and I just had this conversation with Yanko earlier in our show. You said yes to an opportunity that probably scared the crap out of you, whereas many people would be, like, asked to do it, and they would play small and didn't. Would you say that you saying yes to that opportunity has opened up the pathway to you being able to experience, you know, more opportunities in your future?
100% yes. I have chills when you said that about like how most people would say no, and I said yes. In my brain at that time, I never.
No,
Whoa,
you're
sorry.
good. It's all good.
In that in that moment of time, I never considered like the word no. So as an immigrant, like every opportunity that was ever handed to my parents, or I witnessed them saying yes. So in that moment, I was like, that wasn't even a question. I still have
I
goosebumps,
I
literally.
I have
And was I
I
scared?
have to go back one more time because I was just talking to this beautiful 18-year-old girl at the gym who's from Brazil. She's a parent of immigrants. She works 3 jobs, works out, has her own baking business, and is going into college as a criminal psychologist. And she's very much like you. I think there's this profound gift that comes with paving your own way from another country into this country where you do have to take those opportunities when they come. And I think that I'm sorry, but privileged Americans know this. I love you all. We haven't had to suffer, so we find it easy to say no because we're fearful instead of saying yes, which is the catalyst to help us learn who we are and step into our power. I love that.
A
Yeah.
hundred percent. 100%. Like I have friends that I grew up with who had many more opportunities and privileges than I ever had. And yet at this point in my life, 52 years young, like I absolutely have gone
Yeah.
so much farther. And they had so many more
Yep.
opportunities than I ever had. Was I scared shitless? Fuck yes. I remember showing up with like little index cards of like settings, like
Yep.
cheat sheets, right? Guess what? I would be embarrassed to show those pictures now, but in the time, in that moment, those were
Yeah.
great and it worked, and the bride was happy. Um, but I don't know, there was always still like this fire within me to be like, hey, I love this and it is my passion, but I still have this other passion to want to help other people, other women that did not speak English, that were being beat up by their Portuguese husbands, that could not speak, could not do the things that they needed to do to get where they need to go to get protected. I owned a studio. I owned a storefront. These non-English speaking older females would come to me. They would walk to my studio. Back in the day, it's a lot different than it is now. They would walk to my studio. Hey, can you read my bill for me? Can you translate what this bill is saying? Which then turned into a trust or a relationship with these people that were like, hey, this is happening. My husband's cheating on me. He's beating me up when I get home. Like, and that just sparked something where like I can do more than just take
Mm.
pictures. I could do more than this. At this point now, I hit 33 years old, been doing it since 13. That career lasted longer than, at a young age of 33, like that career was kind of like
Yeah.
fulfilled
Yep.
in that moment that I could be like, hey, I can go be a police officer. I can
Wow.
do that.
Where did you gain the self-confidence to I mean, that takes a lot of belief in your ability to have created and cultivated a successful business to then say, I'm no longer satisfied. I'm going to go try something new. And then, of all things, become a policewoman.
Right. I don't know. I know that the fire was within me. I would be lying if I didn't say that with an ADHD, I'm diagnosed ADHD or ADD. I would be lying if I didn't say that has also been my superpower in my life as well. Always wanting to go like to the next accomplish. I firmly believe that that has something to do with it, like the weird. Um,
Yep.
I also have to say, like throughout, like while I was growing up, okay, I needed money to go to college, right? My parents weren't rich, so like I needed money. What can I do? See an ad, run for Miss Rhode Island, get some money for scholarship. So another thing, so pageants always were also part of my life growing up. Why? Because I wanted to wear a crown? No, I know I was a queen. You know what I mean? I didn't need a crown to do that. Why? I used every opportunity in my toolbox to get, to win a pageant. I entered 7, I won 7, and all of those monies and those proceeds, I never entered a pageant for vanity. I always entered it like money for a car, or win a car, win scholarships. That was like the
Yeah.
big thing for me, and those were the things that I did. My dad, growing up, um, when he finally left his country, he borrowed $100. I tell this story a lot of times. He borrowed $100 from his uncle and he moved. He first actually immigrated to Canada. And when he was alive, I would ask him, how did you have the balls
Yeah.
to do that? Because he was a coal miner, get the balls to move to a country where you don't speak the language and start a whole new life as an adult.
Yeah.
And his famous quote was always, you have to take a chance. You must
Oh,
take a
love
chance. You
that.
have to take a chance. And
Yeah.
and and I think that's what shaped me. I've never said no to an opportunity. And I never
I think
thought that failure was part of the equation.
okay, so talk to me about that. What do you mean you never thought failure was a part of the equation?
Um Failure was never an option.
Okay.
Failure for me was just never an option. Like, it was not in my cards. If I failed, bad things would happen. So although I'm super like methodical in how I go about doing things, like changing a career, like I went from 6 figures in my photography business down to making entry level police officer salary of like
Yeah.
$54,000. Like, there's no room for failure. At this point, I have a 7-year-old daughter that, by the way, I'm raising by myself because my my husband was drinking and things were happening. So like, uh, I couldn't be with
Yeah.
him. I couldn't. So at this point now, we're like in a situation where I have a daughter. I'm living in a pretty, good sized house that I had built. So I have large bills that come along with that house, and failure just simply was just not a possibility. Like my father's motto of take a chance, and if you're gonna take a chance, you're gonna leap, and if you're gonna
Yeah.
leap, you're willing to do whatever it takes to make that situation happen. And that was my what I made of, and that's how I get
Yeah,
to where I
so
go.
so for you, failure is achieving the end result that you're striving to get to, but that doesn't mean that there's not bumps, bruises, and challenges along the way to get to that place, right? And I want to clarify for the listening audience because I think it's so easy for individuals to look at you and I and they identify as this super successful individual, but the reality is there's a lot of suffering and there's a lot of grit and there's a lot of bloodshed to get to the experiences that both you and I have been able to cultivate. And it's not that it's not hard, it's just that we're not going to quit until we achieve the desired outcome.
100%. And I will say there's a great line that I follow. And what that line is that champions adjust. So in this moment
Woohoo!
of time, champions adjust. We pivot and we keep going. Our end goal might be this, but if the universe is pushing you like this way, girlfriend, you must pivot and
Yeah,
go into the direction. Doesn't mean it's not equally as successful as your original goal. It just
yeah,
means it looks a little different, but you're still going to get there. So
yeah,
right now, currently in this moment of time, it's going to be almost a year, and that year is going to approach in May. I am a silent partner on a startup, like a tech startup. And it's very hard sometimes to work with other successful people who sometimes maybe are like, hey, this is our goal and this is where we need to go. But guess what? We've changed that road about 10 times. And at every freaking meeting that we have as a bunch of investors, I'm like, okay, it's not working. So we must pivot. We have to adjust to where the calling is coming from. So the original idea that we had is still there. But maybe the location that we need to do it in isn't where we originally said we were going to be. So we just
That
keep
is
pivoting.
such a beautiful philosophy. And I think about, even in my own journey, I took the road less traveled, which means there's not a clear path forward. I just know that I'm not stopping until I achieve the end result that I put forth for myself. And so I think that is so beautiful. So let's backtrack now. So you see these women who their needs aren't being met, they're being abused, and you feel called to be of service. I know from being, calling you a soul sister and family, that you are very spiritually led. You're very connected to your source, God. For me, it's love. Would you say that that connection to your higher power, however you identify it, um, aided you in your ability to go from a six-figure business that you cultivated from the ground up to an entry level career in being a police officer?
Oh, 100%. My faith is uh,
Yeah.
is my compass. So in life, as I continue to navigate to where I want to go, I first of all, I'll have to say that I know for you it's universe, for me and love, and for me it's God. God for me is love and is my universe. I have to say, like, I do sit back, and the first thing that I do is I am super grateful. I am thankful for where I am. Like, I literally thank God when I wake up. I wake up thinking, like, thank you for allowing me to have lived through the night. I know that sounds stupid, but I lost my brother at 37. I lost my twin. I lost my dad at 55 of a massive heart attack. I am now 52. You don't, for 1 minute, do not think that I do not think what is going to be happening to me at 55. Okay. Like, I do not take it for granted that I've lived longer than my dad. Well, I'll get there, but like, I'm living a life that my dad had
Yep.
not been able to achieve in many ways, financially and otherwise. And I've
Yeah.
outlived my twin, right? So I know every single freaking day matters, and I
Yeah.
do not take that for granted. So that's one thing that I, constantly think about. The other thing is I am grateful that I am allowed to be put in a position to help people in different stages or different parts of their life as they move along. So if I see a soul that needs help, even though I'm not a police officer anymore, like, I'm going to help them, whether it be financial, whether it be supportive, whether it just be like, hey, let's go have a cup of coffee, you know? So yeah, my spirituality, my religion will continue to force me to be service to other people,
Yeah,
whatever that looks
it's so
like.
funny. I
And those are
read
the,
Mother Teresa's journals, and I'll never forget reading. She was never inclined to be the global speaker she was, but that's where she was called because of her faith. And so she honored the path that opened up for her. She said yes to the opportunities that were presented to her, which I believe through her faith. Um, and that led her to this speaking in front of huge audiences, but that was never where she would have planned her life to go. And I think very similarly, because you feel so connected to source, you were guided into going into becoming a police officer despite external appearances, which seemingly would say this makes no sense because you're going to make way less money, and you have to start from the bottom and work your way up so that you could align with what felt right in your heart rather than what made sense in your mind.
Yeah, so I'm catching up. I didn't catch this
No,
last sentence.
so that's okay. Yeah,
Technically,
I totally get it.
it's glitching.
I love this. We work with the kinks. So you followed your heart rather than what logic would say, because logic would say, I created a six-figure business. I'm successful. But your heart said,
Mm,
I'm called, I am being driven to do more.
absolutely. So, like, for me, like, money, greed is not what drives me, right? Like, I could easily have stayed in this photography business and continued and like screw that. Like, why am I going to cut down for what? You know what? I have zero regrets. I eventually did go back to photography, not because of not because of money, honestly, because I then met my husband, who was then also a police officer, and we ended up getting to the point where like he was on his schedule of 12 hours, I was on mine of 8 hours, and just I just made the choice for our family. It was a better decision for me to be self-employed and allow him to work
Yeah,
outside the home. Or else, I wouldn't have changed that. Had I remained single, had I remained um if I had the financial support too, like, again, I had a 7-year-old daughter that I had to take care of.
yeah,
But that doesn't stop me in my current position at whenever I can either. So I still help people that don't speak English. I still take them to where they need to be, doctor's appointments or otherwise. So I'm just serving. So champions adjust. I just pivoted to help people and do service in a different way.
yeah. Absolutely. And that's the thing. So you went through a certain period of time as a police officer, which felt really aligned for you to help people. And then you went back into photography and built your business, only to then kind of consider stepping away to go into dry cleaning, which ultimately didn't come to fruition and allowed you to learn more about yourself and your ability to pivot. Can you share, if you're inclined, a little bit about those decisions and how it's led you
Yeah.
to again realize at 52 how worthy you are, how empowered you are, and just how incredibly resilient you are to move through what you're called to do and then pivot?
Yes. So during COVID, as a wedding photographer, wedding stopped. And as an entrepreneur, I'm always trying to like, hey, what's the next thing? So I came up with the concept of owning a dry cleaning business and doing it through an app and pick up and delivery. It was called the Dry Clean Queen. We had like the logos, we had the apps design, we had everything going. Very unfortunately, something sideswiped me, which I never expected. We decided to purchase the business from an existing business, and then we were going to do a whole takeover and the whole thing. Almost 2 years of my life learning, training how the business is run, developing all these other things that were going to go along with it. And what unfortunately happened was the person that I was purchasing it from, well, it ended up being like a scam, right? So they
Well,
had
yeah.
other things going on behind the scenes that we no longer could subscribe to. So at that point, we made the hard decision, like, we have to back
Yeah.
out. So in that particular case, I think the only thing that I failed at in that particular case was trusting somebody that I shouldn't have.
But do you think you
And I should
failed,
have
or
involved
see,
attorney.
this is where I challenge people, because how do we learn ourselves more deeply when, unless we go through challenging situations that force us to examine what feels right for us and how to tap even more deeply into our intuition and guidance. And so I don't look at that as a failure, as but rather an opportunity to continue to learn, how to listen to yourself and nurture yourself. And I'm curious because I've had the opportunity to see you continue to cultivate and grow your wedding business again. And as you said, you're now a silent investor in this new endeavor. How did you stay focused in a mindset of being empowered and moving forward rather than victimized by this experience where a lot of people would stop? They'd be like, oh, this didn't work out, I'm not going to move forward, woe is me.
Yeah, so Carrie, I think I cut the most of that. So I will say that you're right. I can't really look at it as a failure. One thing for sure that was happening while I was like, is I kept getting like gut feelings, and did, I did say them out loud. Unfortunately, I didn't act on them. And one big lesson that I learned during that whole like 2-year process was absolutely like to listen more or trust more
Woo!
my gut feelings. So that was a hard,
Yep.
yeah, it was a hard lesson to learn, but it did get to the point that I was like, hey, something's off here, and I don't know why, but I think me wanting to make sure that it made it happen made me ignore like those deep seated feelings. So that was a hard lesson to learn, and believe me, I will never like not listen to those things again.
Yeah.
Yeah, it scared me that I trusted somebody that I probably shouldn't have, but it was a life lesson. And you know what, too? During COVID, when instead of like putting my energies into like, oh my God, how we're gonna get weddings back, how am I going to like have a living? I put my energy into being creative and learning something new that I would never have done otherwise. So
Yeah.
was it a win? Yeah, at the end of the day, it was a win.
Yeah, and I love that, and you're spot on in that. I believe that we go through experiences over and over and over until we learn our lesson, right? And so how many people, you know, are conditioned to think logically and not listen to intuition? I fundamentally believe that even parents, we start to condition and program our children. Oh, you don't like auntie, but let auntie give you a kiss. When that kid's like, I don't vibe with auntie, I don't want to mess with auntie. So we unintentionally condition our children out of trusting themselves. And we create this story that if it makes sense on paper, logically, it's the right thing to do. And I think all of us go through those experiences of suffering to help us realize, oh, that's right. My intuition said not to do, but I didn't listen. Now I'm going to come back to what feels really right for me so that I can make more informed, empowered decisions that feel better in my life, even if it doesn't make sense to anybody else.
Yeah, agreed, 100%. I think that we are conditioned, like exactly how you said it. We're conditioned to be like, kind of like ignore those feelings. When in reality, our guts are stronger than our brains. That is a fact, scientifically
Yeah,
proven.
absolutely. So now fast forward, so you've stepped back into the wedding space and you shared with the listening audience, a little bit about being a silent partner in another endeavor. You just went through an amazing experience, Fierce After 40 campaign that really highlights empowered women. Where do you see yourself growing into over the next year, or what is calling to your heartstrings that you want to continue to foster and lean into?
I'm not quite sure yet. My new thing now has been like volunteering, feeling like some feelings of wanting to volunteer and work with the
Yeah.
elderly. So career aside, that's been something that I have kind of quietly been doing for the last like 6 months, and it's where I'm going into this specific um, independent living care unit where I show up, I do all their manicures, we do crafts, I use like my fancy degree in art to like go in and work with them, which they freaking love, and that fills my cup. Right now in this moment of time, that's how I'm doing service. Service is what fulfills me. And as I continue to like step back a little bit with working like 7 days a week, now maybe I'll work 4 days a week. That's how we've been doing it. We're about to approach wedding season now. We start our first wedding of the year in
Yep.
April. And you know, a couple years ago, right after COVID, I had decided to cut down on my lifestyle, if you will. So I sold like kind of like the big house and like decided just kind of cut down on things that weren't serving me anymore, and they were more of a headache. And instead of quality of life and what I wanted to do, instead I was like working so hard and giving all these hours, you know. Oh, believe me, I love photography. It brings me tons of joy. My clients bring me brings me tons and tons of joy and fulfillment. But I also wanted to do something else. And again, I'm always called to service, and I keep going back to that. So, although something has to pay the bills at this stage of the life of my life, and as I continue to approach closer to my, the anniversary of my dad's age death, like, if I were to die tomorrow, will I have been fulfilled of just taking
Mm,
pictures? That fills my creative, page, but it doesn't fill my heart page. It doesn't like, I think I'm called to do more than just take
yeah.
pictures. So, yeah, so right now that's where I'm at. I'm like, how can I pay the bills, and how can I at the same time fulfill that part of my life that is so needed, to be filled, which is give back to
Yeah.
people. Hey, I was given the opportunity. I'm lucky. I'm blessed. It's not just hard work. Sometimes it's just being at the right place. And I don't think that's by accident either. Like, I think the universe does push you into certain directions that you need to be in. But I also feel like it is also my duty to give back, whatever that looks like, you know.
It's so funny. I think, one thing you and I are in great alignment is I truly believe as you give, so shall you
Implication a little
receive.
bit, but
And the more you give, the more that you receive. I'm curious, when you look at your life as a whole and all of this success that you've achieved, what have you learned about being in service to yourself? Because something I know of you is that you and your husband extend yourselves all the time to other people. You've helped people on the street. You helped me in my divorce with my children to gain custody of my children. So what have you cultivated in your 52 years that you would want to impart on the listening audience about the importance of service to self?
okay. So I will say that you have been a big proponent on that, and you've always about that, and I receive that with like so much love. And one thing that I have learned from you has been, you know, how does this particular whatever situation serve me? And how can I set my own boundaries?
Yeah.
Boundaries, we've had many discussions about boundaries. And I'm going to tell you, Carrie, like, it has been work. I now take the time to go to the gym, right? I'm serving my mind and my body, my anxieties, going to the gym. I'm saying no. I'm saying no, even when it comes to like, as much as I love my husband and he's my ride or die, like, if he puts me in a situation that I don't want to be in, like, I'm saying no. I'm lucky that he accepts that and supports when I'm setting my boundaries down. But it's hard. I'm a people pleaser. Like, I don't want to say no to anybody.
Yeah.
So slowly, it's taken a while. It's taken a long time. I want to say it's been close to a year now. I'm approaching a year where I'm very aggressively making sure that I'm also fulfilling my own needs.
Woo!
I can't say yes to everything, and I can't. And I am only saying yes. You know, uh, I give you a lot of props because I know I'm not easy, and I know it took a lot of convincing. And we've been on, the phone calls, and then in person. And I also learned by example. Someone like you, someone like Nana, like some of the happiest people that I know. are the same people that are setting boundaries for themselves and make sure that they put themselves first. Like I love, when um I love when I I'll use Nana as an example. I fucking love that guy. When you see Nana, all you see is a happy person. And what are the things that he does? Like I follow him on social media. I see like, yeah, he might be a great salesperson, but that goes a lot deeper. He's making connections with people on a real level. I know like, hey, whenever you guys have come over, Nana eats chicken. We make sure this chicken. Maybe I would make sure that, but that's because someone's asking for chicken. He's serving himself by making sure like he lets
Yep.
people know what makes him happy. And in turn, he's one of the happiest dudes I've ever met in my
And he's
entire
one of
life.
the most selfless. And, this is what I continue to really encourage people to understand. When we pour into ourselves with what feels right for us, we have so much overflow and we can bear witness to and hold space for others. And going back to like this idea of being conditioned with habits and behaviors, right? You're Portuguese. You said it that you're a people pleaser. In some religious ideology, there's this expectation that we give, but the narrative gets missed of you got to give from a full cup. And to get a full cup is to say, I'm not tolerating abusive behavior by my mother in law or my mother. I'm not willing to engage in conversations with somebody who dismisses my ideas. I'm not willing to, you know, continue to work for free while learning your business when I'm not being filled with a sense of fulfillment and joy. And you're 100% right. And that is why Nana shows up the way he does. But I've also seen you really step into that power of what is the choice that's going to make me feel yummy. It doesn't have to make sense to my husband, Dave. It doesn't have to make sense to my cousin, Kerry. It doesn't have to make sense to my mother. But what's going to feel good for me so that I can feel so nurtured and supported that I can then feel called to show up at an elderly home and do arts and crafts and bring joy to people who may not have otherwise experienced that. I super love this call because I feel like we're on the news and we're doing a live and you're like an on the spot person who's bringing in the information while I'm asking you the questions and there's this delay. I'm getting an up close and personal vibe right now.
Oh man. Oh my
Yep.
gosh. Can you hear me now? Okay. I like you froze and I like totally
Half of it.
lost
Oh, that's cool.
about a
It's
minute.
all good.
Oh,
So essentially, I was
yeah,
saying that the
no problem.
fact that you cultivate boundaries and show up in service to yourself gives you the ability to then show up and pour from
Yeah.
your overflowing cup into others. So, but given your
Okay,
yeah,
so
go
I
ahead.
love that's a great way to put it. And Carrie, I've never heard it that way. I guess the other half of not having your cup filled is having it overpouring. Great way to, to think about service or making sure that you are happy, like putting your oxygen mask on first
Yep.
before helping somebody else, right?
Uh-huh.
I have never heard it put that way as an overflowing cup, and I love that.
So let me ask you something. How have you been able to move through some of the narratives around, right? So you come from a Portuguese culture, which is very family orientated, and there's a lot of, ideology there. How have you given yourself permission to overcome some of the lessons or the cultural beliefs so that you can then support yourself in a more meaningful way?
Okay, so I think I might have gotten most of that. Do you are you asking like how culturally I've been able to like navigate
Yeah,
through
so
all of
that way
this?
you don't feel disconnected from your culture, but know that you need to service yourself.
Yeah, I know that sometimes that's a tough one, but I've been learning like I just don't have anything to give unless I feel fulfilled.
Whew.
Unfortunately, that's just kind of like the way it's gone, and the times that I've found like yeah, I think the times that I've found to be the saddest points of my life are the points that I'm not taking care of myself.
Yeah, I love that so much.
When I'm feeling and scratching my way up, yeah, I think when I'm like scratching my way up out of a hole, when I reflect on those moments, are 100% the times that I'm not taking care of myself. Those are the saddest points. And it's so easy to be like, okay, why was my twin murdered? Why did my dad die at 55? Why did my, you know, very close friend, why did he die? All these people also were not taking care of themselves at all. So whatever brought them down to a certain point in their life, they're not taking care of themselves physically, emotionally, substance abuse, any of those things, all of those things. Where are they? They're dead. You know what I mean? Like they're gone and we're here to, we're behind. Was that all for nothing? I hope not. You know, like I said, a year ago, it started with our conversations on the phone where it's like, you know, you asking the hard questions. Maybe I don't like hard questions. No one likes a hard question. But like it does make you reflect. Like what is happening here? Why is this whatever not working?
Yeah.
Guess what? I was not taking care of myself. I was not going to the gym. So in a year, I lose 40 plus pounds. I'm feeling healthier than I've felt in a very long time, mentally, emotionally. We haven't even touched on the point like my husband almost died. Was that all for nothing? You know what I mean?
Well, it's so
So,
interesting. I think that everything, again, going back to our experiences, is cyclic, and we go through experiences so that way we can grow. And when we can look back from an objective place, we realize that everything really was in our highest good, so we can nurture and take care of ourselves in a more loving and supportive way. So since you brought it up, I'm gonna just step into that door. You have experienced tremendous loss with your father, and you talked about alcoholism and your brother being murdered. Are you willing to share, and whatever feels right for you, can you share with the listening audience how you were able to move through those losses to then show up and live the best life for yourself in honoring those people who are with you spiritually but no longer physically present?
yeah. Yeah, I'm glad to share. So all those different circumstances have looked different in their passing, but the end result has always been like these are people that have not taken care of themselves. They've given up on themselves. They were honestly like sad souls. Do I want to say they're better off where they are now? They probably are because none of them were happy. None of them, they struggled with their own, issues and whatever. Shame on me if I don't take lessons from those big hard losses. Shame
Mm,
on me if I don't appreciate that I'm alive and losing someone, right? Like with Shelly and all that. I mean, like like it's almost like a duty to live your best life because you're almost living uh for each and every person that you've lost. You almost have to feel like, hey, they're not here. They can't experience this, but I'm here. So, you know, that brings a quality and a value to a person's being that may not exist if they of losing that particular person.
yeah. It's so
I shed many tears still.
no, go ahead.
I still share like lots of tears, on especially on significant dates, whether it be like an anniversary of a death or my hardest day would be my birthday.
Yeah.
That's by far my hardest day. But I also feel like, you know, they're part of my journey. They were there for a reason. And it does make me stronger. Like, it would be so easy to turn around and go in the corner and just die yourself. Like there's an easy way out to all of these feelings. But they've made me stronger by struggling through it and coming out on the other side. Doesn't mean I'm not entitled to have a sad moment or a sad day, but it
Yeah.
does mean I have a greater responsibility to get out of that moment and move forward.
But I think that that speaks to your resilience and your strength and your ability to navigate challenge and loss, because so often, Jen, I witness people lose something, their career, they fail, they go to buy a business and it doesn't work out, or they're in a marriage, it doesn't work out, and they stop living. And both you and I can say that we took the losses of the individuals that we loved most, that were part of our nuclear family and all of our experience, and we decided to live on behalf of them as well as ourselves. And I think that that is where we show up in the greatest service for our family, is not allowing tragedy to define how we experience the rest of our life.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that, Carrie.
Yeah. So, is there anything that you wanna leave the listening audience
Yep,
with?
100%.
Any advice or words of wisdom that has helped guide you through the 52 years of your life that you feel can support somebody else going through a journey?
Do you mean like specifically career-wise
Whatever
or
feels right for
loss-wise,
you.
or what do you say? Okay. So, I would say without a shadow of a doubt, the first and foremost thing that I would recommend to anyone that's considering like going out there and starting either a new career or starting a new business or whatever, I would say you're worth taking a chance on, because no one's going to take a chance on you unless you take a
Ooh,
chance
so
for yourself,
good, girl.
right?
Yes, yes.
So, in my father's famous words, take a chance. I believe in myself. And if I fail, it's never really a failure. It's just a lesson in what not to do again. So, what do you have to lose? I always weigh those things out. What do I have to lose? I know I won't accomplish it if I don't try it. That's what I'm going to lose. Um, and in regards to life in general, I would have to say that if you do unfortunately come to a point in your life that you lose someone that's so significant and part of your every single day life, and you don't think that you can survive it, I can promise you I am a product of that, and you can survive. And not only can you survive, you can also thrive. You do need support. You need somebody like like you were you were there for me in a positive way, while everyone else is like, oh, this too will pass. You were like, feel the fear. Can you do better? How can you come out from the other side? So surround yourself with the community, with the group of people that are going to support you, but also push you through those hard times, knowing that you deserve better than that bad moment that you're in that moment. Mm,
Oh, wait. Girl, mic drop. You
thank
speak in
you.
my love language, Jen. I love you so much. But that's the thing is, we so often surround
Oh,
ourselves with individuals that are happy to keep ourselves down. They're like, up, I'm in the shit storm and I'm going to keep you there with me. And I'm like, no, bro, you want people to be like, That's bullshit. You owe it to yourself to do better. I know that you're worthy of more, and doing it in a loving way, non-judgmental, but not placating you, because the people who placate you haven't chased their own dreams. They haven't figured out how to overcome their own suffering. And in that, they want you to play small with them, because then that makes their lack of showing up for themselves palatable. Anyway, Jen, this has been such a gift and an honor. And I'm so glad that I get to call you family and watch you continue to shine and rise and do all the things. For anybody out there who connected with Jen and her story, I'll have her information. She does amazing work in the Bristol, Rhode Island, and all Rhode Island area. And I just love who you are as an individual. And I'm so honored to have been able to have this conversation with you.
Thank you so much. I love you, Carrie, and I appreciate all your support. And anyone that's lucky enough to have you part of their life, that's an asset to anybody. So I appreciate you, and I appreciate your honesty and always like pushing us always to do better. So thank you for that.
Oh, I'm honored. I love you so
Love you.
much.